Hello again, everyone. It's JPierce at _JPierce. I'm just going to show you a few more techniques. I'm going to walk you through this scene. It was a photo I posted today, render I did this afternoon. I titled it High Gate. And there's some pretty cool techniques that I want to walk you through, pretty simple stuff. And hopefully you guys can learn something from this and show me what you did. I'd like to see what you guys learned from this. You can reach out to me on Instagram at _JPierce or post comments here on this video. I'm not going to link any resources here today in the video, but I'll include some links in the description to some things I talked about in my previous tutorials. So if you've been watching my previous tutorials, a lot of the resources are the same, so we're just going to jump right in today. Here we go. So I'm going to keep this image up as my reference because I'm just going to show you how I built this, and we're going to go from start to finish and try and recreate this thing. Alright, here we go. So here we are in Cinema with our Octane window open. Just like before, I'm starting with a plane. Set this to 4000 by 4000 and give it 200 by 200 segments. And we're going to go ahead and break it apart and start with our sculpting brushes right away. And the first thing that I did, so I'll show you in here, I have a pathway through here, and then I have some fairly rugged terrain on either side. And that's the first thing we're going to do. So we'll start off by pushing in our pathway here. Let's see, our pull brush. We're going to use the pull brush again. And we're going to do a little squiggle down through the middle here. And that looks fine. And then we'll go over it again, a little wider and a little lighter, just to emphasize it. And now I'm going to start building up the rugged terrain around. So I'm going to increase my pressure quite a bit and start sculpting in some hills here. And let's go even harder. So we're going to do that on this side as well. And one of the cool things I could show you here is that inside of all these brush settings, we have all kinds of cool presets. And the one I want to show you today is this one here, Floor Pattern 01. And you can see on your screen, I don't know if it shows up in the video, but there's a transparent overlay over top of my viewport here. And when I start using the brush, you see it starts making some cool looking texture on it. And then if I look with the camera, it's actually drawing it in perspective, so it's creating these lines, which are pretty neat. So I'm just going to go in and add some rugged stuff, and this is really very rough work because with our textures and everything, this is not going to necessarily show up too much. So, you know, I'm just adding some extra details into this, and it's messing up the geometry pretty bad, and that's okay. I'm not really too concerned with it, but I can go in with by holding shift, I can use the smoothing brush and smooth out some of that topology that got pretty gnarly right in here. And you know, I'm really not too concerned with it right now. But you know, you can see with more subdivisions, you can actually get these brushes to look pretty decent. You know, we're certainly not in ZBrush, but you know, I think for doing sculpting terrains, you can get some pretty cool effects with this stuff, and it's super easy and accessible to work with. I have tried my hand with ZBrush, and if anybody out there wants to make some great tutorials on ZBrush that can teach me how to use it, I would love that, because it's very I had a hard time getting into it. So this is what I work with. So I'm going to reset my brush and I'm going to raise up these hills a little bit higher, make them a little bit more jagged, and then we're going to jump in and one thing really quick, we're going to do a disc and make sure that our pathway is clear here, and it looks pretty clear. So if we do hidden line, it looks like it's okay. We're going to push down a little bit over here with just a straight pull brush. Because that area got a little raised up. So we want to make sure our pathway is clear here. And we're going to maybe lift up some of this here and some of this here. And now we're going to jump in with our RD textures, which I talked about in my previous tutorial. And if you know or have worked with these textures, you probably already know how powerful they are and how amazing they really look. So we're going to do rock number 13, rock ground number 13, and I'm also going to use soil number 13. And I think, let's see, while I'm here, is there any other textures I need? Well, probably just going to grab this green texture for all of my flora. So I'll go grab my green texture while I'm at it. Okay, and I'm going to drop in a daylight also so that I can get a better idea of what I'm doing. So I can see my shading a little better. You can see we already have some cool looking sort of rugged-ish looking terrain happening. We don't need this disc to be visible right now. So here's something that's going to be really cool that I'm going to show you, this technique. We're going to drop our rocks on in here, and I think I did 3 by 3 in the tiles, and then I think I brought the displacement up quite a bit. I think around 150, maybe 120. That seems pretty good. And now we're going to mix in the soil texture. So if we see here, I have these rocks here, and it's all mixing in with this soil. And a lot of this work never really made it into the final render, but it is a really cool technique, and I wanted to share it with you guys because it looks really cool. So we're going to go ahead and duplicate our plane again. Call this one soil, call this one rock, and go ahead and apply our soil texture to this. And now we can see in our live viewer that we have some soil happening, and it needs more tiles, so I think I took this up to 8 by 8. So now we have some soil happening along with our rock, and our pathway is getting obstructed a bit by the rocks, and that's fine. We're going to go in with the pull brush and push down on the rock, clear out the rock from this area, this central area here, and once our plants get scattered, we'll be able to see exactly where our actual path is. Not that it's going to end up being super important, but just one quick note is I can see that what I really want to do is fix this color a bit, because as you can see, if you come in here, it's just a bit too brown and it's a bit too saturated. So I'm going to take it up to tint it a little bit towards the green, bring the saturation down, and it's probably a bit too light also. So maybe somewhere in there it looks pretty good. Now here's the cool trick that I wanted to show you guys. You can see that, like, let's say right here, this doesn't look that natural. We have rock and we have some soil, but it doesn't look like the soil is naturally where it would be in a terrain. And so what's cool is I'm going to go to my soil geometry and I'm going to grab the smooth brush. And what the smooth brush is going to do is it's going to flatten out the areas that are sticking up, and it's going to raise up the areas that are being depressed down. And so when I go over and smooth on this, you see what starts to happen is you get more, the soil is now much more realistic looking in terms of where it would fall, because you have the rocks sticking up and then you have areas where the soil would be deposited by either rain or wind erosion. And so just by using the smooth brush, you can go in and get this amazing look mixing these two together on the terrain. So you can see over here, you know, this doesn't look quite right here, but if I go in with the smooth brush, now it looks like there's soil being deposited here, rocks sticking up over here. So just going over and smooth brushing over the whole jagged areas of the terrain on our soil layer is going to smooth out the soil so that, let me turn my light so you can see what I'm doing. So yeah, you can see here this is not very natural looking, so go in, smooth brush, and just smooth it out, and you see it creates this amazing sedimentation look. You see in here now, instead of it looking like just a bunch of textures dropped on top of each other, now it looks like you actually have soil sedimenting into the rock. Isn't that, it looks so great. It's really a cool technique. And so now when you sort of zoom out and look, I didn't do this one yet, but yeah, just smooth, 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 and look at that. Smooth out this area here, and now we have this amazing looking sedimentation in our rock. And that's just a really cool technique I wanted to show you guys. It's something that I did a lot of experimenting with and came up with this way of doing it that I think it looks really great. And so that's about as much work as really needs to go into this. Probably more work than needs to go into it, but I definitely wanted to show you that because it is such a cool technique. So let's bring our light over around somewhere over here. We're going to zoom out some, and let's load up our viewport preset, which is 1080 by 1350, and go ahead and set in our black bars at about 75%, and push in with our camera. And the next thing we're going to do is I'm going to show you this, how I built this archway. Really easy, really cool. Just grab a torus. I'm going to set the orientation to Z+, and we're going to bring it forward, and bring it up, and let's go ahead and enlarge it. And before I do much else, I'm just going to grab my rock layer and go ahead and lift up some rock area here and some rock area here to link up with where our arch is going to be. And maybe I jumped the gun there on that because I don't know exactly where this position is going to end up. So we're gonna save that till later. So what I do with the torus is just start by increasing the segments. We'll go with 80 segments around by 35 segments for the pipe segments. And I'm just going to grab a displacer, deformer, drop it underneath the torus, and we'll set the height to something around 150. And you don't see anything yet because I need to load in a noise into the shading. and that looks crazy, and you could do something abstract with that, but that's not the look I'm going for. I think I used turbulence and the global scale around 4,000, and yeah, that's about it right there. Yeah, we're already getting something that looks roughly like an arch, and believe it or not, I'm just using the very same rock material that I'm using for my landscape, and it's just a matter of setting the tiles right. I'm pretty sure I had it at 3 by 1.5, and yeah, I think it was something like that, and that's pretty much where I was right there. And maybe this is sticking up out of the ground too much, so we'll bring it down some. And we probably have too much height on our displacer, so maybe just 100. And that'll work for our purposes here today. And let's turn our light so that we can see this a bit better. I probably have this too close to the edge of here. And now I can just actually turn this torus, and because I'm using a torus, it actually sets up the UVs pretty well. So if I go in here, if I get pretty tight on it, you can see I'm not really getting any issues in terms of tiling. In here, it all looks pretty clean, which I'm very happy about. And that's the nice thing about sticking with the primitive shapes. If I tried to model this somehow, then I'd have to go in and probably readjust the UVs a lot. It looks like our torus is maybe a bit too small, so let's increase the size a bit more, and we can go back and increase this height maybe up to 130. Okay, that's looking pretty cool, and now I can start seeing where I want my camera. And for this render, I used, I think, a focal length of around 22, so that I could get some nice dramatic sort of low angle look at it. And it looks like I need a little more space, so we're going to push it back a little farther, bring it over some, and we'll push in a little. And let's see, we're going to switch to camera mode, pivot around, let's pull it back some. And let's see if we can get some more rocks happening right here. Okay, that's cool. And maybe less rock right there. And a little bit more here. And this is where you can go in and, make decisions about where you want the rocks actually to be. The beginning is more of just a rough setting up of everything. But I know I want this rock to sort of rise up and meet where my arch is. So I'm just lifting up these areas over here and over here, and we'll do the same. We'll bring some soil in under here, and I can smooth brush. I can also access smooth brush just by holding shift. So as I'm doing this, I'm lifting and smoothing, and it looks pretty cool. We have a pretty cool terrain happening already, and that's about it for the base setup. I think I pretty much just messed around with bringing the camera into different angles, and also experimenting with rotating my archway some more. Maybe something more like that would look cool. Let's bring it a little closer and go for maybe a little more dramatic angle. Okay, that's pretty cool, and we'll see if we can lift up some more rocks right here, just right under here. And you know, this is going to be, you know, we're going to be a bit different than this image, but all the principles are really going to be the same. So let's go ahead and see what comes next. I'd say it's going to be our greenery, our grass. If you watch my previous tutorial, I had a setup on how to do that, and I just have a little pre-made setup here, and I'll walk you through it. All it is, I have an Octane scatter, I have a random effector, and I have a plane effector. And what happens with the plane effector is, well, the first thing I'll do is I'm going to drop my soil source into my Octane scatter, and we start getting some plants here, and I have a preset greenery material which looks like this right now. And lately I've just been plugging these two in here, and I think for my final image I had turned it a bit yellow and a bit less on the gamma. So that's what you see happening in here. And we're going to switch over to path tracing and go 350 GI clamp 4. And in this render, I believe that I used a poa grass, as well as this tufted hair grass, this one. And I'm not seeing anything happen here, so we're going to do a save. And we're going to resend, and it looks okay. Oh yeah, I forgot that sometimes when I'm working on single screen, this doesn't refresh. When I have the node editor open as opposed to the viewport. So there we go. This is a hair grass, and we'll go ahead and reduce it a little bit in size. And then we have poa, and poa looks like it's okay. It's about the right size. And what we need is quite a few more, maybe 10,000. And poa is a little small, so we'll go 1.5. And too big, 1.2. Okay, and there's just too many, so 5,000. And that looks pretty cool. I think I took this down too much in the saturation, in the gamma. Okay, that looks pretty great. And just another brief explanation with the plane effector. Again, when I bring this up and down, it's going to show me different depths. So if you already saw this in my previous tutorial, that's fine. What you can see is that wherever I move this in the Y, that's where my plants are going to show up. So if I move down, 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 you can see this is where I cut my path. And if I was being picky, I could go in and get rid of these rocks just with a pull brush and make sure my path is nice and clear. And that's probably okay like that. Let's jump back to our camera. And now it looks like we have a nice mountainy path, and it looks like I moved my plane effector just down a little too much, so we want them to be right there. Yeah, let's go right there. Just get it right in there. And that's great. Now all I have to do is I'm going to duplicate my scatter, and I'm going to change the source because you can see here I got some cool plants growing on top of my archway. So I'm going to duplicate my scatter and then just drop the torus right into the source for my Octane scatter. And what you can see is now it looks like a Muppet. And that's not what I want. I don't want this thing to look like Oscar the Grouch. So what I do is really easy. There's this thing called normal threshold. You have to toggle down this arrow. And when I adjust the normal threshold down from 180, what it's going to do is it's going to act like a fall off map. And it's only going to distribute where the normals are facing a certain direction, that being from the top down. So I don't know why they're showing up right here. That's actually really weird. I don't understand that at all, but it doesn't look horrible, so we're just going to leave it that way. And maybe what I can do is reduce this number some, maybe only 1500, and maybe I don't want the POA in there, I just want the hair grass, and that's pretty cool. And what I'm also going to do is change this normal align so that they're not sticking out so sideways. What happens when I move my normal align like this? Oh, I see what's happening. That's because I have my torus is set like this. So if I turn, you can see now it's showing. So now it's showing up like that, because it's actually calculating it based on the axis. So what I could do is modify that axis, but I don't know if that's going to work. And I'm just going to try and get through this tutorial as quickly as possible so that you guys aren't sitting here for hours. If somebody knows how to fix that, please, you can post you can post about it in the comments. The issue is, like you can see, I have them showing up here when it should only be showing up on the normals that are facing vertical in the Y direction. So I'm going to leave my torus like this because that's more accurate looking. So I'm going to reduce, play with this normal threshold, which is really very cool because now you can see that I'm getting little bits of grass in these areas, everything that's sort of facing up. And so that's pretty cool, and I already have my random effector set up to modify the scale by 0.4 and the H rotation by 900, just to give it some extra randomness. And then now I'm going to grab a landscape, and we're getting pretty close here, guys. This is already looking really cool. So hey guys, had a little glitch in my recording, but all that I've done here is got my landscape back here, and I've scaled it up quite a bit. It's pretty large, and all I did was apply my rock texture at around 6x6. And the next thing I'm going to do is go in and add a tree, and the tree that I want for this is going to be this one here, Picea abies, I don't know. And we're going to go ahead and apply our leaf texture, and I'm going to bring this forward so that y'all can see what it looks like. And it's probably too big, so we're going to go down around 0.63, and we're going to want this at viewport levels 3. And what I've found with these coniferous trees inside of Forester is that often the needles they don't quite look right, and what I found helps is simply changing this leaf width value to 2. Wait for it to refresh, and you can see it looks a little bit better. It looks a bit more filled out, a bit more like what this tree is supposed to look like. But we've got too much shininess, or no, we do. No, that's okay. Looks good. So let's see. So I want this first one, I wanted to tuck it sort of here. We'll come in here. And then I want another one. What I use is, rather than duplicating the tree, I'm going to use an instance and turn on render instance. And send this over here. Maybe we want this to be over here. Maybe we want it just to be behind. And let's take a look at our render I did this morning. So we had a couple back in here, and that's about it. So just using the instances is going to save us some power in our CPU and our GPU. So just a couple of trees here in the foreground. I'm not using a scatter because I only need about 5. So now I can duplicate my scatter because I'm going to add this same tree to the background. So I'm going to duplicate the tree, get rid of this hair grass, and change my source to my landscape. And let's see. You can see we've already got some cool looking mountain, tree covered mountain back here. And what I'll do is play around with the normal threshold again and keep just tweaking it. I want them to be very straight, so let's make them very straight. And there we go. You can see I like to have those sharp slopes stay free of trees, so I have this little bit of rock up here. Just a little bit of rock, and we'll lift it up some, slide it over, and make it a little bit taller. Now we can see some more rock up here. And now I'll duplicate this landscape to make one final rear mountain. Push it back so that I have a little mountain back there. And now duplicate my scatter one more time. Drop my new landscape in there. And let's see. Very small trees back there. Play with the normal a little bit. That's pretty cool. And yeah, you guys, there we go. Now we're getting very close to being complete with everything that I did for this. So I'll show you just quickly. I grabbed a Octane Sky, and let's see, the sky I wanted for this was, I think, one of these daytime ones. So this is a daytime sky from No Emotion HDRI. And the way I want to make this visible, mixed sky texture. And so now I have a cool sky up here, some cool clouds, and I think I'm just going to rotate it around some and we're gonna adjust the power up, maybe 2, and adjust the gamma maybe. And now I'm gonna start playing a little bit with my light source. See if I can bring out some better shadows in here. So that's pretty cool. So we have this cool looking, you know, arch with a pathway in front of it. And now I'm just gonna add some really quick fog. The best way to do this is the very first thing you always set, the voxel size editor, set that around 900. If I leave that at the default of 5 and start playing with the settings, it's going to crash my computer. So set that to 900, and then I think our scene is pretty big, so I'm going to go 8,000 by 8,000 by 8,000. And as you can see, that's still not really covering back here, but that's okay. I'm just going to rotate it so that it's facing my camera and set it right about here, because I don't want really any fog to be right up in my camera. I don't really want it to start until it's just past my archway here. So we set up the medium tab like this, full white for the absorption and full white for the scattering. And then I just increase volume step length, increase scattering phase, and then bring down the density. And maybe I don't need this scattering so high. And that's a pretty cool look. And so sometimes I just play with these settings to see what kind of different looks I can get. Probably a bit too dense. It does look pretty cool though. So there we are. And that's pretty much the long and short of it. It's really all the same techniques that I used in the making of this render. Same plants, same techniques, same sculpting brushes. The RD textures use the same textures. So that's pretty much it. And all I did inside of After Effects was a bit of color correction and some tweaking to the colors and a little bit of lens flare in here. But I'm going to leave that out of the tutorial for today. I think I covered enough. So hopefully you guys got something out of this. I want to thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe to my channel and leave some comments and let me know what you think, what other kinds of things you'd like to see me show in my channel. And thanks again.